2023 was a wild year, and the variety of music from the softest alternative and indie to the heaviest deathcore, we had a lot of material to take in. And for some reason, many people seem divisive on some of the biggest releases from old and new names. We all have different views on what's great, but there was definitely great music in 2023. This year was exceptionally difficult to rank each album, but it was also rewarding to go back and see the number of great albums we got. I mean, we had a lot of good music come out this year, and at times it was hard to keep up. You want to be in my video with me, buddy? Talk about music for 20 minutes? Aw. Rules for the list. Number 1, we cover rock, alternative, metal, indie, punk, industrial, anything under that massive umbrella. 2, no live albums, cover albums, parody albums, or EPs. If you are interested in what I thought the best EPs of this year were, I made a separate video just for that, and you can find them in the description, in the pinned comment, in the YouTube bar. It's out there. I promise, if you look for it, you'll find it. I made a video about EPs. Lots of great stuff on there to discover. Number 3, I have not heard every album this year. No one has. So if you love an album that isn't on my list, there's a good chance I just didn't hear it. Leave a comment and let me know what you think was great this year. Finally, this is just an opinion. Don't take it too seriously. Don't take any of these lists too seriously, by the way. They are supposed to be fun and help point out good things. It's not worth getting angry over. Now with that out of the way, here are a few honorable mentions. Code Orange, The Above. An attempted change from the ground up, self-produced and created to make something advertised as different from the current music scene in all genres. The songs that do hit like a truck, and I have to commend the notion of wanting to create something away from status quo while putting out what you want. It also featured Billy Corgan's best contribution to music in 2023. Wednesday, Rat Saw God. This one will most likely be on many multi-genre best of year lists, and with lyric writing as strong as Wednesday delivered, I get it. Production light and filled with raw singing and playing that makes the biggest moments swell high. Emotional and spirited in the quiet moments and ripping your heart out at the angriest in several subgenres combined. Silent Planet, Super Bloom. Refined metalcore with a high polish and excellent execution. It's technical while also having personality and having emotion. Silent Planet embraced electronics to add to their already heavy backbone and arguably created their best album to date. Super Bloom is genty and chaotic as much as it is smooth and seamless. This album is proof that slight experimentation can work wonders. Three Teeth, End X. If you are into industrial, then you need to hear the gritty and dark world that Alexis Minkala has created. Collaborating with Doom's Mick Gordon, End X is the perfect example of a dystopian nightmare sounding amazing. Deep synth work, great choruses, and guitar work that adds so many layers to each song. End X is a dark nightmare in the best way possible. Death Clock, Death Album 4. As heavy and over the top as you would expect the finale from Death Clock to be. Some of the guitar and drum tracks are amazing, all while rekindling the love for Metalocalypse as it sailed off into the sunset. Brendan Small should be proud of all he accomplished in 2023 and proving himself right that his music and creations are money. It'll always be time for Death Clock. So, what were the top 10 best albums of 2023? You know how these videos work, let's get to it. Probably the most difficult album for Foo Fighters to make turned to be their best in a decade. But here we are, dedicated to Taylor Hawkins and Virginia Grohl, is the cathartic, expressive, and in some ways inspiring album that Foo Fighters had to find out the hard way they were capable of making. I remember hearing But Here We Are the first time and being blown away with the big bombastic arena rock Foo Fighters are known for, while having serious meaning in the lyrics. It takes the established feature of the band and music writing to a much more focused place, reflecting on losing a best friend and bandmate again, as well as Grohl losing his mother, who always supported him. The title track and Under You have those huge sing-along moments, but it's the slower and sincere moments in The Glass and the 10-minute The Teacher that add depth and make the tributes feel personal to everyone, even those who never met Taylor Hawkins and Virginia Grohl. The delicate music flow in these tracks truly gives the air of making something unique dedicated to their loved ones. This is my favorite Foo Fighters album since Wasting Light, but Here We Are is a tragedy in some ways, but it's the type that proves a band's tenacity. They can pick up the pieces and carry on. We should feel lucky to even have an album from Foo Fighters in 2023, let alone something that resonates so much. The circumstances were awful, but this album was great. The color scheme might be gone, but Baroness still has plenty of ideas to work with. Stone is the groove-filled sludge metal excellence John and company have been executing for years, but this time it feels like a new page really has turned. This is Baroness unbound from formats and formulas, but instead working with raw creativity. I was blown away by the first single, Last Word, and as time went on, hearing more of the album, then hearing Stone in full, it made me appreciate how Baroness tried to make a very fleshed out album. Stone gets heavy and into your pulse, but the album is also peaceful with the softer notes and quiet sections. The rhythm section is crushing and stands out in the right moments, and the combined guitar work from John and Gina repeatedly stands out. At times, this is a guitar lover's album with plenty of riffs and solos to try and recreate. You are compelled to shout and air guitar along with Shine and Anodyne. Stone is also a more accessible form of Baroness as well, not being a massive double album. As a result, it's a bit more focused, it's definitely experience, and many songs stick with you. Stone is proof that Baroness know how to steer the ship into uncharted waters and come out sounding great. When it came to deathcore, it was Dying Wish that impressed me most this year. Symptoms of Survival was as vicious as I had hoped it would be, with growling fangs to spare. Not only amazing sophomore release from the Oregon deathcore, metalcore-esque 5-piece, but an impressive display of range with that vicious attitude. Classify this as deathcore, metalcore, hardcore, a combination, whatever you want. Dying Wish does it all well. The drumming stands out through the heaviest tracks, and Emma Boster proves her singing range in the clean moments. This feels like a higher level of class and execution over most core material. There is good balance in Symptoms of Survival as well. Watch My Promise Die is loud and ferocious, while Paved in Sorrow is cleaner and more methodical, and the transitions between clean and unclean are extremely well timed and smooth. You hear the nasty riffs from beginning to end, and it's all mixed and produced well. It's fierce and at times extreme with how intense the volume and anger gets, but it's timed and calculated precisely to make each element of the band stand out. I heard this in full the first time and I thought it was unrelenting. And unrelenting is the best word to describe this album at the end of the year. Dying Wish is still an unstoppable force. This was my true introduction to Drain. Why didn't I know about Drain earlier? I mean, Living Proof is the hardcore and thrash crossover I'm always on the lookout for. Living Proof and them almost disastrous shenanigans on stage at Riot Fest made me realize I had been missing out for quite a while, and I'm not alright with that.
Right now, your job is to jump this barricade and to get on this stage and to the fucking microphone.
It's difficult to have joyous fun and a big goofy grin when you're listening to music that's heavy and thick like this, but Drain proves it's possible. Living Proof is not even half an hour, but that also adds to the charm of this album because you want to play it all as a relentless rush of cymbals and riffs and makes you feel like high-fiving someone as soon as it's over. You cruise at a fast pace with Drain on this album. There is plenty of sound to flesh out a heavy album like this. It's at the point of Evil Finds Light where you need to make sure you aren't around anything breakable in the house because it's most likely going to shatter. As aggressive as hardcore and thrash can be, especially when combined into the same package, Living Proof is quite accessible to listeners who aren't all over that style or are new to it. Drain created a tightly made package that has plenty of full runtime replay value. It's so much fun, it's almost worth rushing security. For real though, don't do that. I was there and I know some of those Riot Fest security guards, they will straight up pile drive you if you try to test them. It had been 5 years since we heard New Horrendous, and for every joke people can make about how rough and ugly Philadelphia can be, the City of Brotherly Love deserves some praise for helping contribute ontological mysterium to the metal world. Horrendous came back in a big way, and it was worth the wait. Ontological mysterium, which is fun to say, is filled with transitions, speed changes, genre changes, and jam sessions to the point of losing track of where you are in that crazy mysterium. It's proggy and groove-filled and screaming of death, and it all just blends in smoothly. As a result of all that, it's hard to find anything similar to what Horrendous can combine in one 9-track album. At their core, Horrendous is death metal. This album sees the band pushing their own boundaries into so many types of play. Each track has its own ruthless identity. When you get to Neon Leviathan or Cult of Shadow, and the wild closer The Death Knell ringeth, you hear how skilled each member is and that everyone in the group is going full assault mode. As heavy and dark as Horrendous gets, it's never too much to the point of being overwhelming. Just under 38 minutes and enough time to breathe in between rounds of onslaught. This is anything but horrendous in description, and I hope metal lovers give this one a chance. I was not aware of how much I needed a new voice and personality like Blondshell until I started hearing killer singles back to back. Sabrina Teitelbaum proves that indie and alternative has a new killer performer with creative songs and catchy lyrics that are as witty as Teitelbaum and Blondshell are great names. The singles like Kiss City and Sepsis I heard last year and was impressed with what I heard and how fearless some of the lyrics were while having a great tone in the guitars and backing. Months go by, more singles come. Then the full self-titled releases, and I knew Blondshell had something special. The self-titled debut packs a lot of talent and style that is really lacking in the alternative world, especially when it comes to subject matter. Take topics like toxic relationships and sobriety, and then turn the attitude and volume up at a moment's notice. The clever writing, along with emotional swelling moments, become massive. Blondshell, the album, is bluesy and gritty when the moment requires, which adds more to Blondshell's hand. This is a great example of an album to give a chance if it's not necessarily in the subgenres you listen to. This is an act to watch from now on, and I can see taking bigger stages being based solely off the quality of this album. Blondshell is great. Describing Slowdive as shoegaze sounds appropriate, but after you experience Everything Is Alive and take everything in, you realize it's so much more than gazing into space. This album doesn't allow you to phase out with the background music, but grabs your attention while pulling you into the music, swaying arms and all. The first week Everything Is Alive came out, I really enjoyed it. Several weeks went by, and I was still coming back to Slowdive. Then 2 months went by, and I realized just how much this album compels you to experience it repeatedly. From the opening track and hearing that soft "I Was a Junk Man," it starts the process that calms you and has you settle in for a full ride. This album grew on me more than any other album this year. Alive was one of my most played songs of the year on Spotify. Kisses you can't get out of your head once you hear it, and I mean that as a big compliment. The stripped down quiet end of Lucia plays should be something that puts people to sleep, but it doesn't. You listen to the guitar and hear the words and enjoy everything, and much like the album, Everything Is Alive. Only 8 tracks, but they all complement each other as well as showcase what Slowdive can create. Everyone contributes, from the different vocals to imaginative instrument work and synths. The guitar tones are immaculate. The changing moods all sound natural, and again, you get pulled in from the opening minute when the first lyrics hit. This is distinct shoegaze with layered elements and endless replay value. In 2023, I wanted a new Creeper album. I did not know I also wanted a massive rock opera filled with vampires and teenagers and campy goth shenanigans. Sanguivore delivered in a unique way, and it's incredible to think that Creeper hasn't tried this approach before, as the style fits them like a black leather glove. Once you are hit with the 9-minute opener Further Than Forever, you understand Creeper are embracing a new venture, and you are happy to buckle up and take the wild ride. Amazing way to open an album, and there are so many high points in Sanguivore that it's hard to take it all in. And what should be total cheese ends up being completely engaging, vampire bites and all. Grandiose riffs and synth-filled rhythms, all while Will and Hannah sing their hearts out. It's becoming clear they could just sing Wikipedia entries on the most boring topics, and they can make it work. It's part fantasy, part macabre, and filled with hooks. So many hooks. A tackle box full of hooks. I'm sorry to Creeper for that analogy, it's all I can think of about hooks. Album is amazing regardless of bad comparison. I can understand this was not for every Creeper fan who loved Eternity in Your Arms or Sex, Death, and the Infinite Void. It is different from both though, but in my view, Sanguivore stands out greatly because it's different from rock in general in 2023, not just Creeper's discography. There are so many selling points from the singles like Cry to Heaven to that huge opening track. Creeper continues to impress. I love this one. The all-encompassing songwriter who can bring out an orchestra or just use one acoustic definitely proved himself with Javelin. If there was ever an album that sold me on Sufjan Stevens being around for the long haul, it was this 2023 entry. Stevens continues to prove his music depth as a songwriter. I feel this is not just the best album Stevens has put out in a long time, but it towers over so many other indie albums and artists that put out great work in 2023. The range of instrument work and voices makes such joyous music, even when singing about truly personal and at times tragic moments that speak to his vision through music. Javelin is an album about singing any type of feeling out. Stevens opened himself up a bit on Javelin, letting his own personal events take focus, which isn't something he has done lightly in the past, if ever. The intimate expressions in Will Anybody Ever Love Me and S-Talk give so much personality and voice that it's hard not to relate to the emotions and feelings, as well as feel for them. As long as Stevens has been doing this, it feels like nothing similar to Javelin has really ever been put out by him. The guitars and choruses combined with some of the subject matter hits much deeper than I've experienced. Everything Stevens and his backing group perform always seems to resonate and leave an impression, but Javelin pierces with its melodies and demeanor. Javelin is as heartbreaking as it is triumphant and expressive. The music made makes you feel like you are listening to something big in scope and important as a piece of art. This album needs to be heard and respected as such a welcomed album this year. Thank you for watching so far. If you haven't already, please hit the like button. It does help to push this video out to others on the YouTube main page. Thank you. Alright, what was the best album of the year and will undoubtedly be the most divisive talking point? As divisive an album could be in the heavy music world, Take Me Back to Eden slowly took over much of the music buzz at the beginning of 2023 when singles were being released in pairs. Then when the full album came out in May, Sleep Token became inescapable. You were going to listen to Vessel, and rock, metal, alternative, and everything in between would not be the same. I've had no less than 2 people this month tell me that if Sleep Token is in my top 10 best albums of the year video, they would unsubscribe. So, bye. I was interested the first time I heard Chokehold in the Summoning. Then I heard Granite and Aqua Regia as my curiosity peaked. Then when Vor was released, I was sold. I was ready to jump on board. The amount of times I listened to songs like Vor and Ascensionism probably warped my Spotify accounts. Even a song like Do You Wish That You Loved Me, which I didn't care for at first, grew on me massively over the years. A big part of that due to the writing. You then get the massive amounts of genre fusion, which I truly feel angered most of the unwashed metal elitists. Anything different scares them. Sleep Token instantly upset them by principle alone. Hearing a 7-minute song swaying from electronica to R&B to metal is too much for some listeners, especially if you don't care for the vocal performance or mixing. The biggest argument I've heard about Take Me Back to Eden is how inhuman and artificial some of this sounds, and I don't mean that in a Pro Tools assisted kind of way. I mean that as it's cold and void of humanity. And my counter to that argument is, I think that's a big point of the lore and everything Vessel is doing. It's a fictional theology with a fictional deity named Sleep. The singer looks like this. What were you expecting? Take Me Back to Eden is creative, has hooks, has diversity, has range, memorably distinctive tracks, a narrative, sounds amazing live as well as on record. It checks so many boxes of what people look for in a great album, but it's still massively divisive for many previously listed reasons. Maybe that's just more proof of Sleep Token's success. This has been the album I've come back to the most this year for many different activities and occasions that warranted a soundtrack. I also feel Sleep Token proved themselves by continuing to improve on their production style, which is a big step up from previous releases. Finally, I think this is an album that can point to 2023 in a positive way. A band trying something different with multiple genres and making it great. I stand by the 2023 had a lot of great music. Sometimes you have to dig a little deeper and keep an ear out for new releases, but in doing that, you find some amazing bands and artists. I want newer acts to also make a big splash because we cannot rely on the long-running multi-decade bands forever. Let everyone know what your favorite albums of 2023 were in the comments. Also let everyone know if you found a new band or artist that really got you to jump onto the wagon. Channels like these serve their purpose best when people are able to discover new music. That works in the comment section also. Anything to not make the comment section so volatile and filled with idiots.